Hi all, we're going to look at another one of Fischer's 60 memorable games, this time against Fridrik Olafsson, an Icelandic grandmaster who was also a former president of FIDE. So this was in the 1959 Zurich tournament. Olafsson kicks off with c4, so the English opening, but it transposed into a mainline King's Indian defence. So both Fischer and Kasparov, by the way, were great exponents of the King's Indian, and it was actually those two players which encouraged me to play it for a number of years. So this is the main line of the King's Indian, but White usually castles here. Instead, White played d5. So Black now goes for the c5 square potentially. Fischer did this with knight d7, so a lot of games do end up with a knight on c5 and Black playing for a5 to secure a knight outpost on that dark square. Now bishop g5 was played, and here Fischer kicked away the bishop immediately by playing h6. He didn't want White to play queen d2, making h6 more difficult. After bishop h4, there's a temptation, if you're a King's Indian player here, to play g5 and try and sort of trap the bishop on g3. However, that comes at a big price. Potentially, if you do this, White's later going to do this kind of manoeuvre and go into your f5 square. So Fischer avoided in this game playing g5. Also, if this f pawn moves later, the bishop can reroute to f2. So he avoided the temptation for playing g5. Instead, he played a6, which gives a sign that later he's going to play b5 to generate some queenside counterplay. And also, possibly, he was trying to discourage White from castling queenside. White, actually, though, in this game did pursue a plan of castling queenside and try and attack Black on the king side. So he played knight d2, which actually prepares the move g4, believe it or not. So he can maybe later play bishop g3 and h4, trying to maybe open the h file or encourage Black to play g5 so he can get hold of that f5 square. So here, queen e8 was played by Fischer. So this not only breaks the pin, but also the queen's going to be useful later. But knight h7, f5, and the queen can maybe later come to g6. So the main thing is, though, to provide the resource knight h7 and knight f5, which is thematic, counterplay against the e pawn. After g4, though, it seems White's clamping down on Black's counterplay. But Fischer is not too disturbed by this. He plays knight h7 anyway. And after queen c2, an interesting move, knight g5. So with knight g5, there's some gentle pressure building up on e4. And White really doesn't want to take on g5. That's not very good if he takes, because then Black will have a nice control of f4, and h4 is not really a dangerous attack to deal with. Black can, for example, play bishop f6, and after rook h3, just king g7, bishop g5. It's a harmless attack. So after knight g5, yes, it looks nice and positional, but maybe also knight c5 could have been considered as well, just with the idea of going for f5 without playing this. Now h3. Now Fischer plays knight c5, so he's preparing f5. He's got even more pressure now on e4, but f5 is the thematic move to give him counterplay. After castles, he still delays f5. He plays bishop d7. So he's got another idea for getting counterplay now, that White's committed his king to the queen side. He wants to play for b5, but he does that in a very interesting way. After f3, he doesn't play b5 here. Let's have a quick look at this. b5 here, maybe White can play b4 with a slight advantage. For example, knight a4, taking on a4, and now bishop f2, so the bishop's usefully coming to the queen side. And if White can consolidate a bit on the queen side, his king position, he's going to have a useful and dangerous space advantage. Here Rybka gives it as advantage to White. So Fischer perhaps wisely avoided this variation by first actually having a plan of playing for knight a4. So he's going to get rid of White's option of b4 to attack his knight. He's swapping off the knights, provoking a queenside weakness, which, as we'll see later, is made more exploitable when Black plays f5 to try and liberate this bishop. So bishop d7, now bishop f2. Now Fischer plays c5. So this is a nice preparatory move for playing b5 next. White really doesn't want to take like this because BC and the semi-open B file would just increase the pressure on his king, as well as black being able to play for D5, breaking open the centre. So white just played H4. After knight H7, bishop E3. So the bishop is rerouting to target the H6 pawn. Fischer is not at all disturbed by this. He even is prepared to sacrifice his H6 pawn later, as we'll see. He first plays B5. So he's generating some counterplay now with these breaks, and after knight b1, finally f5. So look at this pressure exerted on white's centre pawns. Both c4 and e4 are under fire. After gf, now white plays e takes f5. A bit controversial because it's potentially opening up this bishop if Fischer gets in the move e4. This bishop's going to be great on the diagonal. So bishop takes f5, and now queen d2. And here Fischer does open up the diagonal. He doesn't worry about his h6 pawn. So a nice thematic move. Look at black's pieces and the queen side, counterplay being generated with b5. So let's have a look at some concrete variations here. What if Olafsson had taken on h6? Well, e3, and I think black's securing a small advantage here. For example, queen takes, bishop takes b1, and if king takes b1, then queen g6, and taking the bishop on h6. Now here's a critical Rybka variation note, which is still interesting to consider. Queen e6, taking queens, and although black's a piece up here, rook takes d6, black has to play accurately to retain a small advantage, according to Rybka. So also, let's have a look now at bishop takes e3. Bishop takes b1, and here the move queen e5 is extremely powerful, emphasizing the problems of these dark squares around white's king. So in this kind of variation, black should retain the upper hand if he can win that b3 pawn, and he's got this very key defensive resource, as we'll see, which happened in the main game, this rook a7. And this kind of variation should start favouring black. So this is a sharp position after e4, Fischer offering the h6 pawn. White simply pins the bishop, and now e takes f3, perhaps an inaccuracy by Fischer. Perhaps rook a7 was more prudent, because in this line, white could have actually played a powerful move here. What he did do in the game was bishop takes h6, but maybe, rook takes g7 would have given white a small advantage. So, for example, king takes, bishop takes h6, king h8, bishop takes f8, queen takes, bishop takes f3 might be possible here, because bishop takes b1, trying to unleash, an attack on bishop here. Queen c3 check protects that bishop, and white can play king takes b1 later with advantage. Or if queen f6, then this position with advantage to white, according to Rybka. So, basically, maybe an inaccuracy. E takes f3 was played instead of rook a7. And white played another inaccuracy, just bishop takes h6. So, this allows Fischer the defensive resource rook a7. And it seems his king's troubles are over now. But not only that, there's an interesting transformation of strategic plan here. That these two pawns, believe it or not, will become very decisive over the next few moves, the way the game was played out. After bishop takes, the rooks came off, bishop d3, bc, check, now check again, now queen e5, and you'll start to see this pawn playing a major new role in another strategic plan just to queen these two pawns. Because after queen takes, d takes, more simplification with bishop takes, rook takes, we have a very fast endgame transition, and now knight f6. So all of a sudden black's threatening things like e4, e3, f2. It looks pretty menacing already with these pawns. Black has the upper hand. So f2, rook h1, white's very passive now, and e4. White has to play very precisely, but it's probably already technically lost now. After king d1, e3, knight f1, Fischer's just rolling him backwards. After rook e5, another terribly inaccurate move was played here, perhaps in time pressure. White should have tried to hold on with knight g3, but let's have a quick look. Knight g3 is still pretty hopeless in the long run anyway. like this kind of variation I've looked at, where black can just march his king up the board and just exchange off knights there, and these pawns are going to start queening. But in the game, white quickly, in effect, resigned with allowing, after king e2, he played king e2, not knight g3, just allowed Fischer's knight h5, with menacing threat now of knight f4 check, and also if knight takes e3, knight g3 check, winning the rook. So after king f3, now e2, and it's all over. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.